Good morning, everyone, and welcome to AAI. I'm delighted that you are here today to hear about Dr. Beatrice Beebe's fascinating research on infant communication. I'm Katharine Stevens. I'm AAI's early childhood scholar. The hashtag for this event is AEI Babies, hashtag AEI Babies. So we'll be taking questions at the end of the event in the live audience and also for our online audience. So if you have questions, please send them to us via AEI Babies. The big takeaway that I think you'll hear from Dr. Beebe's research is that infancy is a far more critical phase of human development than we've largely realized. And I'm really thrilled to have her here sharing this extraordinary research, which I think has profound implications for social and education policy. I'm looking forward to the discussion about that afterwards. I'm also delighted to introduce George Halverson, who's going to be saying a few words about the significance of Dr. Beebe's work before we hear her presentation. Some of you here may know Dr. George Halverson. He's one of the leading early childhood advocates in our country. He's currently the chair of the First Five Commission for Children and Families for the state of California. He was appointed by the governor in 2013 for a 4-year term and then reappointed in 2017, so he's currently serving a second 4-year term, leading the state of California's work in early childhood. Previously, he served for more than 30 years as CEO of 6 different healthcare delivery and financing organizations, most recently serving as chairman and CEO of Kaiser Permanente until from 2002 to 2014. The ACEs work, which many of you are aware of, was carried out at Kaiser under his leadership. I actually met Dr. Beebe through George. He came across her extraordinary research and was so impressed that he reached out to her and then subsequently connected us. It's really an indication of how critically important he thinks her research is, that he's come from California to join us here today. We're truly delighted that he's here to introduce Dr. Beebe.
Good morning. Dr. Beebe is one of my heroes because she has done such innovative and magnificent work in an incredibly important area and has done it at just exactly the right time for that research to be relevant and transformational. Medical science, for a very long time, completely misunderstood and got wrong the significance of the first years of life for children in many developmental areas. People used to think that education began at kindergarten, everything before kindergarten just kind of filled time, and then when you get to kindergarten, the education process started, and people believed that whatever cards you were dealt at birth on intelligence were the cards you had to play for your entire life, and we have had massive learning gaps in schools all over the country that haven't closed in 20 years, and the supposition on that has been that the reason that those gaps have not closed is that the cards dealt at birth to those children has basically predestined them to those outcomes. So I chair the First Five Commission for the state of California. We looked at the research on child development, and it was absolutely clear that the first 3 years of life are extremely important for brain development in children. And in those first couple of years, neurons connect by the billions when you talk, read, interact, sing, count with the child. When you are interacting with a child in those first years of life, you get billions of neurons that are built and they stay for life. And when you get to age 4, the brain, and Harvard Center for the Developing Child has done magnificent work in that. You can look at their work. At age 4, the brain changes. And at 4, the brain purges itself, and the neurons that haven't been connected go away. So the children who are behind at 4 tend to stay behind. So all the wonderful programs, well-meaning programs all over the country, Katharine has written some really great work in early childhood, comparing the various early childhood development programs. But the programs that start at 4 or later have been good and well-intentioned programs, but they haven't closed the learning gaps in the schools and in any settings. And what you have to do, you cannot change learning gaps 15 years, you have to change them at 15 months. So the first 5 commission that I chair started doing, and we discovered that 90% of the Medicaid mothers in California did not understand that there was a possibility of improving the brain strength of their child by exercising the brain of the child in the first year. So literally 90% did not know that 4 years ago. So we decided to change that. We decided to have 90% know it. So we started doing a number of things. We worked with the research, and we've made some progress. And then we were aided immensely by Dr. Beebe's research, because she not only showed us that those first 3 years are important, she showed us that the first 3 months are important. That was spectacular. She measures kids at month 4. And she can predict with a very high level of accuracy at month 4 which children are going to be not learning, are going to have relationship issues. You're going to hear her research from her. She did some stunningly brilliant analysis work by using technology, and you'll see it in taking pictures of the videos of the mother and child interaction, and figured out exactly what was going on, and then based on patterns of behavior, predicted what's going forward. And one of the most beautiful things about that great research is she also showed us that the kids who are behind at age 4 years old, really hard to catch up, but the kids behind at 4 months, there's a magnificent opportunity to catch up. We can actually make a big difference with those kids. So the challenge is we've got to get to every child. We've got to have all the parents doing right things, but we also need to have other people who are interacting with the child at that time. So that's a magnificent opportunity. What we're doing now in California, first 5, the Medicaid, so we took Dr. Beebe's research and we showed it to the Medicaid people, and they basically, now we got 2 things. Because of sharing her work on that time frame, California has passed 2 parental leave bills. And the governor actually cited in the parental leave bill that it's the impact of the first months of life that caused him to sign the bill. And the Medicaid program for the state of California is going to be the OBs. We're piloting them now, are going to be passing refrigerator magnets out to all the mothers that basically say brain development happens in the first months of life, first days of life, and interact in loving ways with your child in that time frame, and you're going to have a child who's healthier and smarter and happier as a child. So the Medicaid program is on board, and her research, I can tell you for a fact because I used it with those people to get them to pass those bills, her research anchored that because it showed absolutely positively that those were really, really important times at a level that nobody had ever suspected. So her research is brilliant. I mean, she's written 6 books. She's written a lot of papers. She trains a lot of really good people. But what they did was and you're going to see this, figured out that you could microanalyze what was happening in those interactions and then identify what was going on and create patterns and predictive patterns from that work. And that's, when I say brilliant, it really is a wonderful and incredibly important thing to do. So that's why it is, and that's why I said, Katharine, you have got to see this work and meet this person. So that's why it's such a privilege for me to do this introduction. And with that, Dr. Beebe.
Thank you, George, for a beautiful introduction. And thank you for inviting me, Katharine. Really such an honor to be here today. So, decoding the nonverbal language of babies. Babies are social from birth. And they participate in relationships with whoever is their caregiver, the mother, the father, could be the nanny. They develop relationships from the very beginning of life. There's this wonderful research by Andy Meltzoff showing that babies can imitate expressions at 10 minutes old. You're going to see this. Father sticks out his tongue, and then the baby sticks out his tongue. So Meltzoff thinks that the babies can figure out from the beginning of life if their own expression is similar to the expression of the parent. So they get the feeling, I'm like you and you're like me, from the very beginning of life. And Meltzoff's idea is this is the origin of the concept of intersubjectivity, how two people's minds are connected. Here's this 10-minute-old baby. Father sticks out his tongue. Now this baby's thinking. Look at him, he's thinking. He's thinking. Ah! 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 See that? 10 minutes old. So early infancy is really a critical developmental period. And my research is on face-to-face communication. Right? So we used to think that all the babies need is food and diapering and good sleep and management when they're unhappy. But the whole idea of the social connection was really left out, the face-to-face connection. So face-to-face communication is the study of the process of how I affect you and how you affect me. Really, it's the study of the relatedness, moment by moment, between us. This face-to-face communication predicts infant social development and cognitive development and brain development. And it's essential to intimacy across the lifespan. Right? Face-to-face communication, lovers, very essential, this face-to-face communication. So we videotape mothers and babies. We do invite the fathers, but mostly the fathers don't come, so our research is really mothers and babies. One camera in the mother's face, one camera in the baby's face. And, people often think that these babies don't do much, but that's just not true. You're going to see they're so sociable, they're so communicative, they're emotional beings, really, from the beginning of life. So babies talk to us before they have words. They have a nonverbal language which we can decode. This is a slow motion film. Katharine really likes this film. And this film is from a documentary film that we made. And it's an adorable pair. So you see a lot in slow motion, right? But then our work takes it further and goes second by second, where we see even more. So our work uses a method called microanalysis, video microanalysis. The micro means the small unit, which for us is second by second. And you can see an example of video microanalysis in a minute. So there's two cameras, one camera in the mother's face, one camera in the baby's face, split screen, right, like a sportscast. When you watch them, you have to remember you're going to see them side by side, but they're really face to face. The mother's instructed, just play with your baby as you would at home or interact with your babies at home. The only thing that's different, no toys, because we want something that's really face to face. And you're going to see this intricate world just below perceptible time. You're going to see stuff that you can't really quite see in real time. all these little events, all these little shifts of gaze and little shifts of head orientation and changes in facial expression, we can't really see it in real time so well because it's too rapid. This is an example of a mother-infant interaction that goes well, and it predicts, this kind of interaction predicts positive relationships at 1 year, secure bonding, and better cognitive development. So you're going to see real-time video first.
Hello. How are you today? Are you a yabba yabba yabba? You got bubbles. You got bubbles. Here. Hello. Did we wake you up? We put you in the car and you fell asleep. And then we got here, yeah. And we woke you up. Oh, really? Oh. Really? Are you sure? Oh my goodness. You still have bubbles. I see them. Yeah. You still have them.
So when I ask my students, what did you see? They all say, oh, they saw something really sweet, really positive. You could think back through the film. Did you see any other little moments, little bits of moments that are slightly different from just positive? And if we had time, I'd make you look at it a few times before we go frame by frame. But as you're going to see next, we're going to evaluate all these moments where the baby is looking at the mother or looking away, or the mother's looking away or looking at the baby. Facial expression, from positive to negative facial expression, or positive to negative vocal emotion. Orientation, right? The baby has a lot of capacity to orient, from the vis-a-vis to a little bit away, further away, arch away, all the way back, right? Or given tonus. So the baby has a lot of capacity to communicate just through little shifts of how far away he's orienting from you. And we also look at the mother's orientation, from upright to forward to looming into the baby's face. And we look at from the mother's touch patterns, from affectionate patterns to intrusive patterns. All of this is coded, that is evaluated, by a research assistant, second by second. So one research assistant is going to code, does the mother look at the baby or look away from the baby? Spend 2 years on that one code. And another person will code, the mother's looking and looking away. Another person will code the baby's facial expression. Another one, the mother's facial expression. So it takes a long time to code this stuff, but that's how we do it. So this is the frame-by-frame analysis of the video you just saw. Notice the numbers at the bottom of the baby's frame, hours, minutes, seconds, and 30ths. And you should be really looking at the seconds, the 04. And this is from 04 to 05, going back, 04 to 05. So now just watch the baby from 04 to 05. Watch the baby's head go to the right. And again, 04 to 05. Watch the feet. Again, 04 to 05. Watch the hands, right? Now go back and watch the mother, 04 to 05. Mock surprise. Now watch them both from 04 to 05. As the mother does a mock surprise, all those parts of the baby's body move, right? So maybe one of the reasons why we are so affected by our parents is that every bit of our body is changing in coordination with the movement of the parent, right? That might be one of the reasons why the parent's communication influences the baby so much. But you're going to see the baby's communication also influences the parent. So now going from 5 to 6, right? Watch again. 5 to 6, the baby just reorients his head back up toward the mother, 5 to 6, and the mother's sort of playing with her face. 6 to 7, 6 to 6 and a half, 6 to 6.5, the baby is turning his head to his left as the mother moves her head up. So the heads go up together, right? Do you sense that? Watch the heads go up together. See that? And meanwhile, of course, the baby's hands move and his feet move. Now, 6.5 to 7.5, the heads go down together. See that? 6.5 to 7.5, the heads go down together. Then, right here, watch this one. From almost 7:28, so almost 8 to 10, like 2 seconds, watch the baby's left hand. See that? Watch that again. See that? The baby's left hand splays out there, and the mother has a little bit of a, oh, what's that expression? Then you can see her hand, her left hand coming in at the bottom there to maybe to soothe the baby. So here we are, her hand is already in there, watch that. This is from 10 to 17, so it skips 5 seconds. Her hand is in there, and they're both saying, oh, what was that? Right? Oh, what was that? And then 17 to 18, the baby says, ooh, I'm so surprised, right? And the mother says, 17 to 18, oh, I'm so surprised, right? The eyebrows both go up at once, 17 to 18. Oh, so surprised. Then the baby says, less than a second, right? It's 18:05 to 18:25. Half a second, the baby says, I'm not happy, right? See that expression? I'm not happy. And the mother says, coming back here, 18 to 18:20, oh, I'm sorry, right? So watch that again. I'm not happy. Oh, I'm sorry. And then the baby says, 18 to 19, yeah, it's bad, right? Yeah, it's bad. And the mom says, oh, I'm really sorry. Then this is 1902 to 1913, not even half a second. The mom says, well, maybe it's not that bad, right? Coming back. Maybe it's not that bad. And the baby says, as she says maybe it's not bad, the baby says, I don't know. Right? No. And then, 19 to 20, mom says, I think you're okay. I think you're okay. Really? Baby says, really? And then he says, all right. All right. Then the baby picks his head up. Oh, right? And the mother's saying, is everything okay? He picks his head up, is everything okay? And then the baby picks his head up and toward her, says, oh, I like you. I like you. And then 24, 25, the mother says, I like you too. I like you too. And then 25 to 27, the baby says, yeah, I'm really happy with you. I'm really happy with you. Right? So that is an example of what we call microanalysis. So that level unpacks the connection between the two of them and shows you moment by moment. Did you see any of that in real time? No, you can't see that in real time. It's too fast. What you see in real time is it's a great pair. You might have seen the moment where they were both surprised. You might have seen little bits of things that had a little suggestion of this, but you couldn't possibly see really what was happening. It's too fast. So we have kind of fancy mathematics that analyze, as I move across time, does my stream of behavior predict yours, which means does my behavior influence yours, or are you adjusting to me? So we have nice fancy mathematics that allow us to say, is each person adjusting to the other one? Is each person responding to the other one? Now, everything the baby does, you saw that, everything the baby does has potentially communicative meaning. And the mother has to decode it. And how she decodes it is really critical, right? What does she see, and how does she respond to it? And each one is responding to the emotions of the other ones really fast. But one important thing to remember, this is an out-of-awareness communication system. These things are happening between mothers and babies. They're also happening between us, anytime we have a face-to-face communication. But these things are out of awareness. Our research studies the things that are too fast to be really aware of. It's a system that is based on this rapid action processing, and it's a system that we probably had even before we developed verbal language in the evolution of humans. So the babies learn patterns of relating. They learn, how does my behavior affect yours, and how does your behavior affect mine? How am I influencing you? How are you influencing me? The babies are learning these patterns. We call them expectancies. The baby is learning what to expect. What is it like to be with you, right? So why does this matter? These interactions predict social development, and they predict cognitive development. These interactions are critical to infant development. So, for example, our work shows that these interactions predict the nature of the bonding in 1 year, secure or insecure. It predicts the cognition at a year, predicts brain development. Feldman's work, it predicts the capacity to regulate stress and predicts child and adolescent capacity for empathy. That's also Feldman's work. And the capacity to engage in reciprocal, intimate relationships. We have a 30-year follow-up study that's, we're finding babies that we videotaped in 1985 and following them up now in young adulthood. And this is an ongoing study. You can imagine how long it takes to find them, but we've found half of our original sample. And there's initial suggestion that the way the mothers and the infants and the stranger is a novel partner. Often I'm the stranger, or one of my graduate students is the stranger. So the stranger and the baby and the mother and the baby, how they coordinate their vocal turn-taking patterns at 4 and 12 months predicts aspects of the young adult's development 30 years later. So, for example, one of the things we're predicting is called reflective functioning. And that is how well can you reflect on your experiences. So we're predicting that from how mothers and babies coordinate at 4 and 12 months, which is quite amazing. So now I'm going to give you an example of a mother-infant interaction where it doesn't go well. This is a painful interaction. I don't have a film. I only have drawings, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But this kind of interaction does predict social difficulty and less optimal cognitive development. You're going to see a baby who becomes increasingly dysregulated and frantic, really frantic. But remember, the mother's not aware of her expressions. And this mother likely has childhood trauma in her background. So if the mother is distressed, if the parent is distressed, for example, anxious or depressed or self-critical, living in poverty, experiencing a lot of work stress, and so on, then the parent cannot be optimally responsive. So sometimes the parent withdraws. Sometimes the parent becomes overly vigilant, overly responsive. That's another reaction. And particularly, sometimes the parents can't really empathize with the baby's distress, and that's what you're going to see in this interaction. So I really can't share most of my videos because they're protected. They're research videos that are protected. So I had an artist draw some of these frames from films in order to be able to show people what they look like. It's not as easy to see the drawings as the real video frames, but you'll be able to see it. So they come from this book, the Mother-Infant Interaction book, which is a series of drawings. Mother-Infant Interaction picture book is what it's called. So here's the first drawing. And notice that the baby is already upset, and the mother sort of looks like she feels, I don't really know what to do. I really don't know what to do with you. So she does a mock surprise expression. So sometimes the mock surprise expression is a way of getting the baby back. So maybe she's feeling like, oh, maybe I can, jolly you out of this. But the baby is very unhappy. And then the mother laughs, and the baby turns away. Now the baby's starting to turn back, and you see the baby a little bit turns toward the mother. But the mother's face shows like, I'm not so sure of you. What is she feeling, this mother? I'm not so sure of you. I'm not so happy, the mother feels. And then the baby turns back, looking out, but still frowning and unhappy. And the mother might be feeling, I don't know what to do. You make me feel inadequate. In the film, you hear her saying, when the baby's upset and whimpering, you hear her saying, don't be like that. Don't be like that. Almost begging the baby to smile at her. Don't be like that. And then the baby starts to really cry, and the mother is surprised. Oh, what is that? Why are you crying? She doesn't understand. And then she puts her finger in the mouth. Now, the baby's mouth has been hurting, she told us. So when she puts a finger in the mouth, maybe she puts a finger in the mouth to try and soothe the baby, but it hurts there, and the baby becomes frantic. And again cries, and she again says in the film, don't be like that. So the baby's upset, and her face shows, this is a partial disgust face. So her face shows like, I really can't stand this distress, right? Maybe it elicits the mother's own distress, right? Her own childhood traumatized distress. She can't really handle the baby's distress. Don't be like that. It's horrible. Don't do that. And then the baby's more upset, and she again has that face like, I can't stand this. And then this face has in it also some annoyance, some withdrawal. I can't take this. I can't do this. And then the baby looks horrified as she shows the mother shows a mock surprise face. Again, maybe I can jolly you out of this by playing mock surprise. Can I jolly you out of this? And the baby looks horrified. Then I think she has her feelings hurt, right? She draws back, and the baby's upset. And then the baby's really crying, and she emotionally withdraws, right? Or she becomes blank. I can't do this. I can't do this. I don't know what to do. I can't do this. You make me feel inadequate. I can't do this. And then she looks away from her baby like, I can't handle this. And the baby really jolts away from her. See that? Look how the baby jolts to his left. He just turns so strongly away from her. She's surprised. You see the surprise on her face. And then she's upset. You see a moment there where the mother has a bit of empathy, like, oh, right? Oh, a little bit of empathy on her face for that moment. But here the baby screams frantically, and the mother withdraws. I can't do this. I can't go there. I don't know what to do. This is too much for me. So, whoops. So that is an example of an interaction that does not go well, that predicts insecure bonding in a year and less optimal cognitive development. When the mother, particularly these disturbances in the management of the baby's distress, when the baby is distressed and the mother smiles, like sense your own face becoming distressed, right? Make a distressed face. Can you make a distressed face and look at me? Let's say if the mother smiles at you. Doesn't feel right, right? Make a distressed face again. Let's say she shows a surprise face. How does that feel? It doesn't really feel empathic, right? Or let's say, make a distressed face again. Let's say she goes blank, she withdraws. Or make a distressed face again, look at me. She looks at her baby and she looks away. So those 4 patterns that we discovered Disturbances in the maternal response to infant distress predict insecure, disorganized attachment at a year. So being able to manage the baby's distress is a key aspect of secure bonding. Here's an example with me where I'm trying to do that. So I join the cry rhythm.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Put my hand here too.
Oh.
Yeah. When he looks away, I wait for him to calm down. I join the whimper rhythm. I join the rhythm of the distress.
Ooh, did you chew? Ka-choo.
He's not sure, but
Yeah.
he likes me.
Ka-choo.
Yeah. And I put my hand here to try and help him, manage his arousal. So what I am doing is finding some aspect of the baby to join. Finding some way to join the distress, to let the baby know that I sense his distress and I'm on his wavelength. So that's the key. Are you on my wavelength? Do you sense me? Do you recognize me in my distress? I communicate to the baby that I recognize the distress and that I empathize with it. The infant's emotional development depends on being recognized. The baby needs to be recognized in the positive moments, and he needs to be recognized in his distress moments. And we as adults also. Our emotional equilibrium depends on our partners recognizing us in our different emotional states. And the babies are just like us. Whoever is a consistent caregiver for the baby, the father, the mother, the housekeeper, the nanny, if the baby is in daycare 10 hours a day, that daycare worker will have also a major impact on the baby's development. So the father, we don't have many examples of the father, but here's a delicious moment of a baby with the father.
Hey, I'm a gummy bear. Yeah, gummy bear. Ooh.
So we have a flexible brain. Our brains wire themselves to whatever environment we're developing in, and our environment is our social environment. So the baby's developing in an environment of social relationships. Is the environment like that positive pair, the first pair that we saw? Development will go well. Brain development, social development, cognitive development, learning will go well. Is the baby in that second relationship where the mother probably has traumatized herself, probably feels that the baby's distress is too much for her, triggers her own unresolved distress, she can't bear the baby's distress, she can't go there with the baby? Is the baby developing in that environment of a traumatized mother who cannot bear to empathize with the baby's distress? That baby's development is not going to go well, social and cognitive. They will have very different developmental trajectories. In summary, babies talk to us before they have words, and you can learn to understand the baby's nonverbal language. As early as 4 months, the nature of the mother-baby nonverbal language sets a trajectory that predicts development. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. What else? Yeah. What else, honey? Yeah, the mommy wants to get you. Oh, baby. Goosey, 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 goosey. Goosey, 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 goosey. Hi, Goose. Buzz.
So you'll never see a baby in the same way, right? From now on, you'll see babies in a much more differentiated way, right?
So after having watched, gotten familiar with Dr. Beebe's research, I found myself seeing so much more in that little video than I did before. And I was hoping that you guys would have that experience. It's just that sense that there's just so much going on there that we really haven't been thinking enough about. So Dr. Beebe, I have a number of questions, and I am wondering where to start. In some cases, you share these videos with parents, right? And what kinds of reactions do they have to seeing this sort of this social microscope on their interactions with their children?
Yeah. So I do. I've started making documentary film interactions. I invite parents to come and just play with the baby for a few minutes, and then I play with the baby for a few minutes. And then we're videotaped watching what we just did, right? So the mother and I are in one camera, and what we're watching is in the other camera. And I'm showing them I start showing them a little bit of real-time video, and then I do the same thing I did for you, the frame by frame, like, what do we see? Let's go back, let's go forward, what do we see? And they say, oh my God, I can't believe my baby notices every little thing. I never realized that.
So even though they are engaged in that relationship, they're not seeing the level of sensitivity that their baby is having. And are there interventions that make sense out of this research in terms of coaching parents?
Yes, definitely.
Can you say a little bit more about how that works, if there's been work done with that?
Right. Well, we've been treating mothers and babies for a long time, but I don't do very much of it because mostly I'm doing research. But the method we use is a little bit similar. If it's a mother coming for therapy, I would never do the frame-by-frame analysis because it's so minute and the mother could feel exposed. So I tend to show the film in real time, or we could stop frame it and go back, or we might even do slow motion, but I wouldn't actually ever do that frame-by-frame part. It's just too vulnerable. Like I had a wonderful, wonderful mother who said, oh, I'm setting the pace and I'm setting it too fast. I didn't realize that. I think that's what my mother did with me. And then all of a sudden, so the therapy was to go through the film and for her and me to figure out where she thought she was setting the pace too fast and what she thought she was feeling at those moments that got her to kind of set it too fast. And then what she wished that she could have done, what she might have done, what was it about that was uncomfortable to her? And so she comes back the next time, and everything is good. This was a wonderful mother. It was like a 2-session treatment. Doesn't usually go that well, but this was a wonderful mother. Yeah.
So there are some studies that suggest that up to 50% of low-income mothers suffer from postpartum depression. What are the implications of that for the development of their children?
Yeah.
What has your research showed about the experience for a baby of having a mother who's depressed?
Yeah. So there's a huge literature on maternal depression. I have one paper on maternal depression, but there's huge literature documenting that maternal depression predicts cognitive and social development difficulties in the baby, young child, older child. And babies can become depressed. I don't know if you know that, but babies at 4 months can be depressed. A depressed baby is one where it's sort of limp, and there's there's really no animation in the face. There's kind of a postural tonus, loss of postural tonus. They might not look very much, sort of gaze averted. Babies can be depressed if they're not with really a responsive caregiver. Maternal depression has many flavors and varieties, right? So when it's packaged with maternal early childhood trauma, is a different kind of depression than just sort of ordinary depression. But I can say in our sample, which is a middle-class sample, half white, 30% Hispanic, 20% Black sample, highly educated sample. The whole sample is pretty highly educated. In that group, the mothers who were depressed at 6 weeks, so it's really postpartum depression, that depression affected the communication at 4 months. And so an example of one of the findings was that the mothers really didn't follow where the baby's looking as the baby's looking away as well, but they over-tracked the face of the baby. And when they became vigilant in a particular way, which was when the baby was happy, they were overly thrilled. And then when the baby became sad, they were overly disappointed. So it's almost as if they're watching the baby's face to see if they're loved, but not really watching the whole baby, right? Where's the baby at? What's the baby looking at? What's the baby's focus? Yeah.
Right. So
that baby's not going to feel as recognized, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you entered graduate school in 1968.
Yeah.
How has our understanding of infant development changed over the past half century since you started?
Yeah. So when I went to graduate school, I knew I wanted to study early infant development and emotional development. And I was really discouraged from doing that. I was told, why don't you study children? There's so much more going on with children. There's nothing really going on with babies, right? So that's 1968. Although there was already a fair amount of research in the late 60s, early 70s, suggesting that babies were really much more competent than we thought, but it hadn't filtered down. Now, 50 years later, there's a huge amount of research showing that babies are social. I mean, mine is just one small piece. There's a huge literature on how social babies are. But it hasn't filtered down into the general population's understanding of babies, right? So in fact, our understanding of babies is radically different, but as a culture, our understanding of babies hasn't kept up with 50 years of research, hasn't somehow managed to get out into the general culture, right?
Right. So along those lines, you've recently published your 6th book, but this is the first one aimed at a general audience. The Mother Infant Picture Book, exactly.
Picture book,
There's a flyer on the tables.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of that book, and why did you want to publish it?
Yeah. So everyone always asks me to loan them my films so they could teach, right? And I have to always say, I'm really sorry, but these films are research films and they're protected. Their confidentiality is protected. I can't loan these films. So I decided I would have a talented artist draw them so that I could help people understand more this intricate communication between the mother and the baby. So I took I took 10 patterns, my favorite ones, 4 that predict secure attachment at a year, a couple that predict insecure, and then 4 that predict the insecure disorganized, which is really the trauma model. And I had this artist, this very talented artist, Dylan Yothers, draw these frames from the films. And it took me and Dylan about 6 years to get the drawings to the point where I felt that they were disguised. So he was going to change the nose and the eyebrows and the jaw structure and the hair and everything, but keep the emotional expression. So that was hard to do, and we did that. And that's what this book is about. It's an effort to communicate to a more general audience the details of these communications, the absolutely glorious, beautiful ones, the ones that go up and up and up and up into these beautiful smiles, and then the more disturbing ones, like that second dyad that I showed you. Yeah.
So this is a policy think tank. And here we're always thinking about the implications of research for policy. You wrote that we need a dramatic shift in the way that we as adults and as a culture view infants.
Yeah.
And there are really 2 things that I think about when in light of that. One is the need to do whatever we can do to help parents, mothers and fathers, be the very best parents that they can be. And as you know, there was a recent survey done by the Bezos Foundation and 0 to 3 that found that 90% of low-income parents describe their children as their greatest joy. So, and there's a lot of research on parents desperately want to be good parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first implication that is in my mind is that, the implications for how we can help parents be better, create better social environments with their children, one-on-one relationships with their children. And then the second is childcare, because we have millions of young children who are spending 40, 50, even 60 hours a week in the care of people other than their parents, starting in infancy. Clearly, the relationships that young children, that babies have with their parents, there's something very unique about that. But based on your research, does it seem to you that the kinds of relationships that, for example, the child care worker who's taking care of babies 10 hours a day has with that baby, are those relationships going to be important to the baby's development?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a huge literature on the effects of putting babies into daycare. And the literature is contradictory, right? So it's not my literature, I can't tell you chapter and verse, but there's some good outcomes and some bad outcomes. I don't know if there's any research specifically on what's the contribution of the the daycare caregiver relative to the contribution of the parent. I doubt that research has been done, but that's really the question that you're asking. But even without that, we know that whoever is spending 10 hours a day with that baby is powerfully organizing the baby's expectancies of what it's like to be with you, and powerfully organizing the baby's brain. So those are very important relationships. Whoever spends a huge amount of time with a baby is considered really a primary partner. Those relationships are tremendously important. So we need to support those caregivers, those daycare workers. We need to help them understand how babies communicate. And in terms of parents, I think that the only way you can really help a parent nurture a baby, apart from sort of coaching them, is to nurture the parent, right? A very deprived parent is going to have hard time nurturing a baby if the parent feels they're emotionally starving themselves, right? So nurture the parent so the parent can nurture the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have about 15 minutes for questions from our in-person and online audience. Yeah.
I was wondering, in terms of percentage of time, to have if you have, they say, a depressed mother. Okay, I'm Fred Altman. Is there any data on how much time with a positive caretaker for the child will counteract the negative effects of the mother? So that would affect social policy of how one could affect the children.
Yeah. I really don't know the answer to that, and I doubt that there's research at that specific level. We do know that if the mother's depressed and the father isn't, right, that father's impact on the baby will be huge, right? So that if there is one positive parent, the baby's development is in a lot better shape than if there is no positive parent, right? If both parents are depressed. So you definitely need at least one powerful caregiver who's in good shape.
So
Yeah.
the positives that can overcome the negative effects.
I don't know overcome, but certainly contribute in a very positive way. Yeah.
Because it would suggest that in terms of public policy, one should screen the caretakers for their ability to interact, because I'm sure that
Yes.
there's a lot.
Yes.
And how much
Yes.
time they spend with the
Yes,
child.
and these early caregivers, non-parental early caregivers, can be trained.
Yeah, so he didn't have the microphone, so just to repeat your comment, what you'd said was that we should be screening caregivers, paid caregivers, non-parental caregivers, for their capacity to build these kinds of one-on-one relationships with babies. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And they should be screened for depression, right? Because you don't want these daycare workers to be depressed. Yeah.
And actually, just to follow up on that, I think you've written about how the baby in your study, the 4-month-old babies, can be in a difficult relationship with the mother, and then when you come into the picture, like the little video you showed us, the baby kind of, there's like sort of a fresh start. Like the baby is up for a new relationship now.
Yeah.
Could you say a little more about that? Is that correct?
Yeah. So this is such an interesting area, and there's actually very little work on it. But whenever we videotape a mother and a baby, or a father and a baby, we also videotape, quote unquote, a stranger and a baby. I was always a stranger when I was a student in my early days, but now my students are the stranger, right? My graduate students are the stranger. So we always have a mother infant and a stranger infant. Babies are very sociable with strangers at 4 months, very sociable. Not necessarily at 12 months. By 12 months, it's much more specific to the parent. And they have, quote unquote, stranger anxiety, but not at 4 months. 4 months is a fabulous time to intervene. 4 months is when the social flowering of the baby's capacity is there. So babies are enormously sociable with the stranger. If the stranger is not overwhelming to the baby, right? If the stranger goes slow at the beginning, waits, sees where the baby is, and gradually these babies will warm up to a stranger. Even some are right ready to, and some need a little warm up. As long as the stranger is pretty attuned to the baby will do very well with the stranger. And that has big implications. So like in mother-infant treatment, I'm the stranger. I use my interaction with the baby to see where the baby is, what's the range of the baby's capacity. Because if the baby is pretty off with the mother and really so connected with me, what do I know? Nothing wrong with this baby, right? So the stranger-infant interaction is powerful as an evaluation, but also when I treat a mother-infant pair and I interact with the baby each time, I'm actually treating the baby. Because the baby is learning something from me that he's not really getting from the mother. And the next time I come, the baby recognizes me, recognizes what I do. And let's say I've played, like I like to play like this with the baby, right? And because they love little things with the mouth. They're paying very much attention to the mouth and the lips because that's how they're going to learn language also. I like to play with that, and they like to play with me with that. The next time the baby comes, he might make that expression to me. He recognizes he's going to elicit from me the game that we did the time before. So you can actually treat these babies, and the baby has a new experience with a stranger that he takes back to the mother. And then he plays that game with the mother. And he tries to elicit from her that same move. And so you see that these babies are enormously resilient, if you give them some, additional experience with an attuned stranger.
There, Andy Klingenstein and then Brent over there. Andy, can you introduce yourself?
Andy Klingenstein from the foundation of the same name. Fascinating talk, Dr. Beebe. I wonder, is it possible to imagine yourself as the Dr. Ruth of early childhood development, where you're speaking to a broad audience and you're trying to generalize? Obviously, you've said a lot about this is a very sort of intimate one-on-one thing where you've got to address oftentimes the issues of the mother before you can really repair the relationship. But are there some just generalizable things that you could tell the public other than this is really, really important time?
So I find that generalities just don't reach people. And what would reach them is that frame-by-frame analysis that I showed you, let's say of the first mother. Let's just start there. I think you learned something from watching that, right? I mean, if I said to you, babies are enormously socially responsive. Oh, yes, that's interesting. What does that mean? Pay attention to your baby's social cues. Well, they've probably been told that 1,000,000 times. But if you see how this mother pays exquisite attention and how responsive the baby is, because notice this mother twice empathizes with the distress. And then she says, oh, but could it be okay? Whereas very often when the baby's upset, it's don't cry, or let's shift your attention, or you're really all right, or, no, look at this, right? But if you she does it twice. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. And then, oh, but maybe it's okay. Could it be okay? That is so talented. She comes up with that herself. If you teach from the film, I think people will get it. I think anyone would get that, don't you think?
Was she coached to that?
No. No. But what do you think, Andy? What do you think? If you showed that film with my explication?
I think that's amazingly effective, that film.
Yeah.
So I do have a question, but I would agree with you that I think like the messaging work that you did in California is necessary just because I think there's such a low level of knowledge to begin with, and that you've got to start somewhere. But I think the next stage of it is really to create replicable a curriculum that can be replicated in other settings through uses of like the film that you have here. we've done a lot of this with healthy marriage and responsible parenting programs, but nothing at the infant level, of trying to teach good early parenting practices to large groups of people. We've done great with nurse home visiting, which I'm sure has some of these, the nurses are working with the moms to try to communicate some of this. I think those programs are demonstrated effectiveness. They're great. We need something broader, I think, that can reach more people and begin to take us from zero knowledge up to the basic messaging that we've seen in California into skill development would be the next stage. So that's my thought on that. But my other question, my question is, and this is a comment that I have heard in many settings, which is that some of this work, not necessarily your work, but the ACEs work and some of the other early childhood work tends toward being overly deterministic. That if you don't hit that window in the first 4 months or the first 3 years or whatever the window is that you want, you're doomed. And that's not a good message for the public to get. And so I'm curious. I see you agreeing, and I'm wondering what's the right way to message this so that people don't lapse into despair.
Well, I'm a psychoanalyst.
Sorry?
I'm a psychoanalyst as well as an infant researcher, and I treat people of every age. And I believe that people can change at any age, right? I mean, one of my favorite patients is 82. I love her. And she's changed. So you can change at any age. However, there are what they call sensitive periods in development. I mean, we aren't like the kittens who, if their eye is closed during a certain part of their brain development, when you open that eye, they can't see anymore. We're not like that. But there are sensitive periods. And I think that the terrible experiment of nature that shows us just how sensitive our periods are the experiences of the orphanages, European orphanages, where, evidently after 2, development, if they're adopted after 2, development is really less repairable. Some people say after 3 or after 4. It's a question of where is that boundary, and there's some discussion of that, but somewhere in there. So we do have sensitive periods, and also all this brain development work suggests that there are sensitive periods. So you don't want to give the message you're doomed. You never want to give the message you're doomed. You want to give the message, hey, if we can do this early, your baby will have, really better future. Baby will have a good future if we don't, but your baby will have a better future if we do. So absolutely have to give that positive message.
Are there Twitter, Meredith, do you have Twitter questions?
So somebody on Twitter asks, why do you think you've had so much trouble recruiting fathers for your work?
Because the fathers go to work, and the mothers are very often at home with the babies. By a year, actually, a lot of the mothers go back to work, and it's harder to get the mothers too. There's a lot of dropout at a year because mothers go back to work. But earlier on, in the first year, the mothers tend to have a more flexible schedule than the fathers. Yeah. But anytime we include a father, the father is delighted, and we are too. Yeah.
Are there questions over here? We have time for just one more question.
My name is Jutta Mary Leinen. I'm a mental health nurse in Schoolport in Canada. And I have seen increase of hyperactivity, inattentiveness, attachment issues in early grades. So I was wondering if you have seen increase also in your research since the technology increased 2010 or around that time, either if mothers are preoccupied with the iPhones while holding a baby, or if the babies are put in front of media or YouTubes or things like that.
I mean, I'm very sympathetic with that question, but I actually don't know the answer. I just see what you see, you know, as a private citizen, so much more of the iPhone. You know, they're walking down the street with the baby, but they're talking on the phone, and they're not really, yeah. But I don't have any actual research on that.
But the idea would be that if the baby is so eager to be in a face-to-face relationship,
Yeah.
one would guess that it's not optimal when the baby's
Exactly.
wanting to interact with the
Not
mother,
Yeah.
and the mother is looking at something else. That seems like it would be a really interesting area for
Yeah.
research.
Yeah, somebody's written a book about it. There is a book, if you can look that up, on how the iPhone disturbs face-to-face communication. Yeah, at all stages, right? You go to a restaurant, you see a young couple, and they look adorable and they look romantic, but they're both each on their own phones, right? So, yeah.
So that's we've got it's 11:15, so we're going to close. I want to thank you so
Thank you.
much for coming here and
Thank you.
sharing this
Thank you,
research with
Katharine.
us.
Thanks for
This is
inviting
really
me.
important for
Thank
us
you,
to
George.
understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.